is mostly. And there's about 2 or 3 different ways to change fractions from decimals. The first way would be the easiest one, and they're the fractions that you already know what the decimals are. For example, 1/2 as a decimal. I would think Colton could tell me 1/2 is what, Colton? As a decimal? What? You say 0.5? Yeah, think in terms of money, half of a dollar is 50 cents, or a quarter of a dollar is 1.25, or 3/4 of a dollar is 0.75. But what happens with things like, so that's way number 1 is ones that you already know. But what about when it's like 3/10? The tenths hopefully are easy too because the decimal is Ava.
Well,
It's 0.3 because that's the way you say it is 3/10. Okay, so the tenths are easy because you just put a decimal in front of it. But what about something like 3/5? 3/5 gets a little tougher. There's a couple different ways to change 3/5. Sam, one way would be to
multiply them by 2 each.
Okay, so one way is to make it so that there's a tenth on the bottom, which would be times 2 times 2, which is 6/10, and then you know it's 0.6. But what if you have something like 7/8 and you don't know what 7/8 is? Some people do, some people don't. You deal with fractions and decimals a lot, you know. Okay, what is the way that you can always, always, always change a fraction into a decimal? Alex? Let me put it up here. Give myself a little room. Avo?
You can see it's like you can divide it by like 1,002 equals 8 into 1,002 equals
Yeah.
2 it.
Yes, but that gets a little more complicated probably than it needs to be. I mean, you could go to another 1,000, see what it is. But let me just tell you, children, a fraction is no more than just a glorified division problem. 7/8 is the exact same thing as 7 divided by 8. And you can always convert a fraction to a decimal by changing it into a division problem and actually doing it out. In other words, 8 doesn't go into 7, bring up your decimal point. 8 goes into 70 how many times? 8 times, which is 64. 8 goes into 60 how many times? 7 times, which is 56. And you keep going until this works out. 8 goes into 40 5 times. So the decimal equivalent of 7/8 is 0.875. You can always, and that's the longest way, but it's the way that in the end, if you don't know and have no other way of doing it, it's the way you do it. Now, like if you have this, what about 4/25? 4/25 as a decimal. Okay, first thing you check, do you know what it is? Probably not. Second thing I would always look for is, can I easily turn the bottom into a 10 or a 100 or even 1,000? Now this one I could have, but it's not easily done. 25 goes easily into what? 100. So if you can make the bottom 100, you can change it into a decimal. You multiply by 4, you get 16/100ths, and as a decimal that is 16/100ths. But if you can't, and something doesn't work out nicely that way, let's say like, I don't know, somehow I'm trying to think of one that works out, because there, believe it or not, children, there are some decimals that don't work out so well. For example, well, 7/9. Any idea what 7/9 is as a decimal? Well, and again, if you don't know, turn it into a division problem. It is 7 divided by 9. I think you'll like this. 9 doesn't go into 7. How many times does 9 go into 70? Which is 63. What do you get? 7. How many times does 9 go into 70? Huh?
7.
7 times, which is 63. How many times is 9 going to 70?
7. It's a continuum.
Yeah. The ninths are easy because they're always repeating decimals and they're always the number on top of the 9 that repeats. So 7/9, we write the repeating decimal like this. Is 0.7 repeater. Guess what 8/9 is? 0.8 repeater. 3/9 is 0.3 repeater, which is the same as 3/9 is the same as 1/3.
Would 9/9 be
33.
9/9 would be 1. Unfortunately. 9/9 would be 1 there. Morgan?
So your answer would be a fraction with nothing on top of it and 0.7.
No, this is your answer.
Yeah.
I don't know what you said. The answer would be a fraction with nothing on top of it. I don't know what that means.
Well, like that. Like it doesn't have a numerator on top.
This doesn't have? That's not a fraction. That's that line means it repeats.
Oh.
It's not a fraction line. That's a repeating line.
Okay. Don't let that jump.
Holly?
What if it's a mixed number?
If it's a mixed number, that's where we were going to next. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You just write, if it's 3 1/5, you just keep the whole number, stays a whole number, and you change the fraction into a decimal. And 1/5 is the same as 2/10 if you double it up. So you keep the whole number. The whole number will never become part of the decimal part. It'll just be the whole number. Okay. You will find, if it gives you, children, if it tells you that you can use a calculator, and anywhere in this you can't use a calculator, but you can skip the problem. So if it says to use a calculator, just skip that problem. And that should work, I guess. I think that's it.